Welcome, everyone, again to the Seriously Social podcast, episode 18. Just a quick recap, we got Lorenzo Johnson and Kaushal here, two partners at a world-renowned social media agency called Socially In. We work with the world's largest brands and businesses, and we essentially help them execute everything in the realm of social media. And today we got a jam-packed episode of a few different things. We're going to have some updates for you all on what's happening in the world of social, give you businesses some ideas about some tips and tricks that you can utilize to help your business grow. But before we get into those two things, we also have two big areas that we wanted to focus today's conversation on, right, Lorenzo? We wanted to talk about
Yes, sir.
the big Meta Connect conference that just happened. Obviously, Meta is a Goliath when it comes to the social media space. And on top of that, the world is obviously still hot around AI, and we have some fascinating AI updates that apply to the world of social media as well. So let's jump into it, and we are going to immediately kick it off with the Meta Connect Conference 2023. I think it's a 10th year that they've had the Meta Connect Conference. A few different things that happened. Zuck is obviously very big into the whole metaverse space in general. So the conference wasn't only centered around what's happening in the world of social media. It's a lot about also what's happening in the world of the future of the metaverse, Web 3.0. But a few of those updates that Lorenzo and I always like to kind of stay key to what's happening in pop culture, what's happening in the world. And there are a lot of things that Meta is doing that does impact what businesses will be able to do in social media. But the big takeaways from the Connect conference first is the Quest 3, obviously a mixed reality headset. If any of you have ever used the Quest 1 or 2, you would only be immersed in the metaverse. But with the mixed reality, you can actually bring the metaverse to reality that you live in as well. So it's a really cool idea. Very interested. I don't know if I'm going to get the headset yet. Did you happen to catch the price for those? I don't remember it.
No, I
I don't
didn't
know, and I actually
actually.
don't know if they released the price either. But that was one of the big updates that they were talking about. It was so huge. Actually, a video that Lorenzo sent me about it, where Zuck did a podcast with another individual, and through the lens, it literally was the individual's face like they were in person. It's pretty much Zoom, but think about Zoom in a 3D format where you're able to actually visualize and see the person. And they had an in-person podcast in the metaverse, and it was actually really amazing just to think about the possibilities of how that can shape the social world, the business environment for how people are collaborating and working together. What were your thoughts when you just saw that podcast briefly?
The first thing, as soon that's why I immediately sent it to you. I was blown away by how hyper realistic that it looked.
Right.
Like when I heard about it and I knew that they were doing it, I was like, okay, is it going to look cheesy? For some reason, in my head, I almost envisioned like an avatar, like that, like a Bitmoji type
Right.
of thing. That's the approach I thought. And then when I knew they were talking about hyper realism, I was like, but how real is it actually going to be?
Right.
I was extremely impressed with how real they actually looked when it came into it. It actually reminded me of kind of us being you doing a podcast, and I was like, bro, we might have to test that
In
out
the
and
metaverse,
kind of
yeah.
see what that actually
Maybe
looks
a
like.
future
So
episode.
that's one of the things I thought was the coolest part of it is that we're really stepping into that space where the metaverse is starting to kind of start to blend that line of reality.
Yeah.
Years ago when they started launching all of these things, that's kind of the idea and it was hard to see, but now we're starting to see all of those things that really make you start to see how it does start to become closely indistinguishable between
Right.
real life, quote unquote, and again, what this virtual life and image that you can create. So I was very impressed by the look and feel of it, and then as far as the use cases as a result of that, man, that really excites me about being able to do that. I start to think about one of the things that we're talking about from a remote culture standpoint is
Right.
after you do that for a while, how do you really build that camaraderie that happens when you go into an office? The idea you go into an office, hey, Kosho, hey, blah 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 blah. It's a different feel. The ability to go and knock on somebody's door and say, hey, you got a couple seconds, break room chat and all of those different types of things. So what really excites me about this is getting also into kind of the mixed reality and different things like that is
Yeah.
how to bring some of that remote culture,
Back
but really start to tie it in back to what it was like when we all used to go into the office. Because
for
I
sure.
think that we're missing that. I think we're missing that as an organization. I'm sure there's a lot of other organizations. So that's what starts to excite me. Imagine a world
100%.
where, we give all of our socially in employees one of these types of headsets.
Hmm.
They put them on, and then you can go, and it's literally just like engaging and hanging out with your coworkers and different things like that. That type of stuff seems really cool when you start talking about the potential of it. So
I
those are
agree.
some of my immediate thoughts, and then some of the things I immediately started to think, how cool would that be if we could do that? We could build virtual rooms. Some really
Hmm.
cool things when you start talking about the difference between mixed reality and virtual reality.
Right.
Now we're talking about the ability to co-work on like a whiteboarding space and things like
E-
that. Me and you
Exactly.
were working on that project yesterday, and we literally were like, we need a
Whiteboard.
whiteboard. And
Yeah.
Zoom gave this version of a whiteboard. And I'm like, well, I got a whiteboard here and I can turn my camera and things like that. But imagine if we were able to put on a headset and literally be able to interact together
Hmm.
with a whiteboard in that space right there and draw down on things just like we physically would if we were in the office. So
I agree.
those are some of the really cool applications on a day-to-day basis that I'm super excited about, especially in this remote culture, and starting to bring back some of that the excitement, the energy that you get when you go into an office. Man, I'm missing some of that sometimes.
It's actually a very interesting point and a small segue because then we can get back to the conference. But just understanding the economy and the way the job landscape is or the employment landscape is. And it's very important for business owners, leaders, I would even say big corporations to really
Yeah.
start to grasp that the culture has shifted to where remote work is obviously a norm, but even more than that, the generations have started to adapt to that being the actual day-to-day reality, right?
Standard. Yeah.
And we even have an employee that's works with us, has literally been working remotely since 2014, and it's like going back into the office because we had an idea that we were going to implement about audio channels where we treat the rooms like an office space where there's different conference room, there's a lunch room, there's a break room, there's different department rooms. So if you're a part of a team, people can actively see that you're in that audio room, you can converse with people almost like you were in the office without being physically
Hmm.
there or on video all the time. The
Hmm.
downside of that immediately is for the culture, it felt more like being micromanaged or being watched essentially by leadership,
Hmm.
and that's not the culture that makes people feel safe. That's not the culture that
Right.
brings the best out in employees, and especially have how they've
Right.
shifted. It's important for us to figure out how do we still have that dynamic, because you're right, that dynamic is missing and it's very crucial for ideation and creativity and innovating the business. But how do we still meet them where they are? And I think this
Yep.
starts to allow, like I said, the cost and how feasible it is, the way that the technology works, that's still up for in the air. But it's going to be super important how we start to adopt that, because we will get that nice medium of meeting them where their mindsets are and where the
Yep.
dynamic of what we're looking to create can merge together. So it's very fascinating.
Well, yeah, and one thing that I'll add on to what you just said that I think is important is that we want people, especially in this culture, to want to do that. And
For sure.
that's kind of so we're thinking about using Discord. So a lot of times on this podcast, we talk about the major platforms. We don't really talk about what we consider the minor social platforms. So
Yeah.
we're exploring this idea through using Discord
Discord.
and
Hmm.
basically creating, like Kaushal was mentioned, an entire Discord. You have break rooms, lunch rooms, sales offices, all of these different things
Yeah.
that you can do it. But again, you're right. There is that fear of, well, people just want to know where I'm at and all of those things. And we're like, no, we just want you to be excited to engage. We want
We
to
want
have
the
a culture where
energy.
people want to talk to people,
For sure.
because again, if we were in the office, it's completely different. If we were in the office, it's nothing to walk by somebody and say, hey, what's going on? What'd you
Exactly.
do this weekend? How
Exactly.
are you? A lot of those things, I think, and I know we kind of went off on it, but I think this is still good stuff. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things that you're missing from remote culture is everything has to be professional
Hmm.
and everything has to be scheduled. Everything has to be revolving around work, all of those things. Like you just don't have that opportunity to just hang out with your coworkers, to just get
Right.
to know your coworkers. Again, just the thing of what you doing this weekend. oh, okay, man, that sounds great. This is what I'm doing this weekend. Just that casual talk because there's not really an appropriate place to do it at. You know what I
I
mean?
agree.
Like if I need to talk to you, I got to schedule it. Or if I huddle you, it's like, what's going on? It becomes awkward if I just randomly out the blue hit you
Just
up and I'm
want to
like,
talk, yeah.
I ain't want nothing. I just
Yeah.
wanted to see how you were doing today. I just wanted to see what you did this weekend.
Yeah. It almost feels
That's awkward.
awkward. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels awkward. Like, what you want, man? What you doing?
Yeah.
But again, that's not the culture that we want. We want that culture that's exciting, that energy where you want to know what your coworkers are doing. We try to build hubs and things where we're like,
Mm-hmm.
hey guys, like we have our Slack channels for people in Atlanta, people in
Mm-hmm.
Birmingham. Connect, go get a drink, go get food, go grab lunch together. We want people to like each other, not just work with each other because they have to. And
For
obviously, you
sure.
can't force that. And I get all of those different types of things, but that's what I'm excited about is the shift for what the metaverse can do for remote culture, without
100%.
having to do dramatic shifts. So do things like you were talking where there's certain people who've never. So we have people at our in office who have never worked an in-office job in their
Life.
professional career.
Yeah.
Don't even know what it's like to have to wake up and be at a spot and do those different types of things.
Right.
But at the same time, we also don't want to take that a dramatic shift and say, all right, guys, 100% back in office. Stop all of that. If you have a hub in your city, you need to go into the office, blah, 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 blah. That's not what we want at all. So I'm always interested in exploring middle grounds and new
Mm-hmm.
innovation that'll start to help do that. Because I don't know the answer to it, but
Right.
it is something that we find very important, and that I can't wait to explore this for our own agency.
I agree. And like I said, the real big advantages to it is what, specifically on social, right? Like tying it all back to social media, the big opportunity here is that if we can bring and foster that type of communication and that type of collaboration, it will bring out the best for what the brand is trying to communicate, let alone, what we're trying to do in our business to help brands, but the
Right.
brands themselves, the businesses themselves, what they need to be doing is figuring out if you are virtual, then how do you start to bring that back if you are in person, but then how do you start to take that type of creativity back onto social? um, and
100%.
and I think it's going to be a fun journey, but I'm glad to see what Meta's doing. And the ironic
Me
thing
too.
is, because most people, this is what I love about, companies like the Microsoft, the Googles, the
Mhm.
Apples, the Facebooks, I mean, sorry, the Metas. But I think that division, I was reading the article, but that Metaverse division lost like 13.7, 13.9 billion dollars this past year. But
Billion.
and most people, that's scary, right? Like I can only imagine thinking about losing that much money and figuring out how you're continuing to innovate but still stay core to your business, because remember what Meta is. It's, it was two big social platforms that really innovated the space, and now they're really shifting the bigger goal to, this creating
Right.
this environment. But I
Right.
think going back to social media, that's where we need to start to be thinking about is how do we tie in all of that creativity, all of that
Mhm.
collaboration, and start to think about what Facebook is doing and what Meta's doing, and start to bring that in together. So it's going to be fun.
100%, man. And yeah, and it's always interesting to follow these things because it, it's always trending, and because us, we start to think super big picture of things. So we were talking about building an office in the metaverse, and
Mm-hmm.
now we start
Would have
talking
been a
about
bad idea.
advertising in the metaverse. There are big plans to recreate the world. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And digitally, so you go into it and all of those things. So to your point, I can't wait to see how this continues to progress, so we can say, okay, brands that are interested in being innovative, being at the forefront, testing some of these things out. Let's just explore and see what happens. And
I agree.
we're doing some of that on a super basic level from AR filters and some of those things, but it's nowhere near what I can't wait to see when we can take it to the next level as far as the metaverse is concerned, and truly connecting with that innovation and brands that find that important.
I agree. I agree. Awesome. So back to the conference. So yeah, the Quest 3, obviously that's huge. I'd love to figure out the price. We'll probably drop it in the description later. But that's going to be interesting because I do remember it, if I'm not mistaken, it was a little bit more on the expensive end. Alongside of that, just staying on the space of, the metaverse real quick, because the Apple Vision Pros are going to come out next year too. But those are a hefty fee. But I'm interested just to see, like I said, how they're going to start to make it a little bit more seamless for people to actually live in there. Because you're right, if you think about Meta Horizons world, you were an avatar, you were just the weird stick looking
Yeah.
figure, and now to actually see
So, I got a super funny story on that, man. So the first time I ever built one,
hmm
Um, Literally, I get into it and I was just rushing through it. I just wanted to see what it was like. I'm like, let me just put this on. So I get my
Yep.
Quest. Man, dude. So one of the cool features was the live watching sports thing. So
Yeah.
like I'm trying all these things in games, and I was like, oh, you can watch sports. A basketball game is playing. I love hoop.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, let me go and do it. So you come in, you put it on, you're sitting courtside right there. Super dope. Well, as you know, you can go into these different spaces and things like that. So they
Yep.
have a meeting space that you can go and you're checking. So I just walk in, show up, and I'm like, there's just all these people and their avatars just there talking. You hear all the conversations, you
Yep.
see people talking and things. I'm walking around looking. It all of a sudden clicks in my head as I'm talking to people that everybody else is dressed,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just sitting there with my like naked avatar
That is
walking around, and I'm
wild.
just like, all right, let me actually go through and edit and make at least make my avatar a little whatever. So this little naked dude
Naked
walking
stick
around
figure.
talking to everybody and stuff like that. Man, I was cracking up the first because it didn't even like click in my head. And all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute,
Was
everybody
really
has on clothes. I didn't change my settings for clothes. I was like, looking, I'm like, I don't got no clothes on.
that's so funny. That's so funny. No, those rooms are hilarious, but no, I'm super excited about that. And then segueing to another big piece of technology that came out. The Ray-Bans aren't new, but they have been innovated. And so Meta and Ray-Bans collaborated, created the smart glasses, and the
Fire,
revamped versions are amazing,
fire.
amazing. I'm really excited about the fact from, like I said, going back to a creative standpoint to produce content, the fact that you can go live on these, and it was funny because I know that it's much more improved just from the look, the style, the functionality. But a buddy of mine actually had those Ray Bans. I think the first iteration that came out, and we were at South by Southwest, if I'm not mistaken. I think 2 years ago. Oh, not this year, last year actually. And we were just walking, and he literally started recording, going live on his glasses, and we were talking about something, and I were like, "Oh man, we're being compromised. We're on live," and it was just so funny to be thinking about. You're walking and you have your glasses, and now you're going live on social media, and the more and more creators are thinking about showcasing their lives and being able to document and create and put more content out there. I think this is a very seamless function to how people can do that very easily without having their phone out all the time and having to record things. I don't know. I think they're what, $300. I don't
Three.
know. Yeah, I think I need to get
I
them.
actually, yeah, what I was going to say. So, number one, they're fire.
Yeah.
So, the immediate things I started to think through is number one, um, is it going to be all hype? Which I felt like the last iteration of the glasses were. The
Yep.
last iteration of the glasses were supposed to be able to do not all the things, but a lot of the things they're talking about doing now, the last ones are supposed to, and they just
Right.
fell flat. The
They did.
functionality, it just wasn't as seamless. It wasn't as crisp. It
It
didn't
didn't
do
even look
what
as good. Yeah.
everybody thought that it was actually going to do. So
Right.
I'm curious, and I'm sure that they've made some fixing and things like that. So I hope I hope it's going to be what we think it is. Because I mean, everything from the ability to read a different sign or read different languages and different
Languages.
things like that,
Mm-hmm.
just having it translate right in your glasses. The practical things that you can do with it, they seem
Huge.
super, super dope, man, and
Yeah.
super cool. So, but I will say, for all of the functionality they're promising, I think the price point is pretty low,
I do too. You get normal
which makes me
normal glasses for 300, $400.
literally normal glasses for that. So that's part of where I'm
I
like,
agree.
it leaves me a little skeptical. It's one of those things where you talk about the value and price points and things like that and how going cheap. The cheaper price point to me almost makes me feel like, is it really gonna do all the things that you told me it was gonna do? Whereas opposed to if they had that, $999 price point or something like that, 1,500, then I'd be like, yeah, I think these are going to be the ones. So I
Yeah.
kind of find it funny how I appreciate the price point. My
Right.
pocketbooks appreciate the price point, but it does make me just skeptical initially of, did they fix all the things that they said they were going to? Is it really going to be all the things that they said it was going to do? Or like we know, big data or tech companies is going to be one of those things where you're going to have to buy a bunch of add-ons. So is it 300 for the glasses,
Mm-hmm.
but then you're going to have to pay 50 for this and 99 for this, and then next thing you know, you're like, man, I'm paying $600 just in subscriptions and all of those different
Right.
things to actually get the glasses to do what I want the glasses to do. So I am kind of curious behind that type of business model. But man, as far as what they can do,
Mm-hmm.
that video that they released, that was
Fire.
fire, and I can't wait to. So I'll be getting a pair with you. I'll be getting a pair with you.
Yeah, I think I want them. And you're right. The price point is always interesting. I've been watching recently the new Netflix show that I don't think it's a Netflix show, but it's a Showtime show, but it's on Netflix. It's called Super Pumped. It's a story about Uber.
I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
very interesting because this when you were mentioning that, and Facebook's notoriously been known to most of their products, like if you even think about that little video display that they had or anything else that they've ever created hardware wise, they've technically not been too crazy of a price point ever outside
True,
of the Quest. But I kind of really think of Oculus as a different company, even though Meta
true,
owns
true.
them. But the what reminded me of is in the show, when Uber first started, they were trying to keep the prices all super low, and it was really for adoption purposes. And I think this is
Right,
maybe
right,
a
right, right,
similar
right.
play with, how do you start to bring tech wearables, I guess you call them, into play. Like the watches have always kind of been a thing, but now you're starting to think about other components of what people wear and
Hmm.
bringing technology to them. I think it's like an adoption thing to where I think you're eventually right, whether it's through subscriptions, whether it's through hardware upgrades or software costs, or eventually they'll be over the cloud, but the price point will start to justify what the value it eventually brings.
Right, right,
So,
right.
yeah, that's a fascinating point.
But that's why you got to get in now, though.
Hey, if you got into Tesla when the full self driving was $3,000 and now it's what $15,000, so it's like yeah, sometimes
You're
it
winning.
benefits you going in early. Okay, awesome. So the other last point, big, like I said, big 3 points. We wanted to talk about the Quest. We wanted to talk about the Ray Bans. The really big third one is all of the things Meta is doing in the world of AI as well. Like I said, we're gonna take this last point of the connect to segue into our AI session. But ultimately, they've started to announce a bunch of different AI functionalities, whether it's create or generative AI for the ads that brands run and the businesses run, whether it's AI for the chatbots and the community management for customer support reasons. This kind of ties back into
Hmm.
what we're doing, but they're starting to implement all of this capabilities now that OpenAI and ChatGPT have started to bring into the normalized world. That they're starting to integrate it very well into all of the things that they're doing from a social commerce standpoint. What you're going to be able
Yep.
to do to switch the products out and have different creatives and this and that. It's pretty fascinating that if you're just somebody who starts to understand how the technology works, because they're trying to make it dummy proof almost as well, and we'll
Hmm.
get into this when we get into our AI session, but you don't have to always be an educated prompter or an educated
Right.
communicator. They're going to try to make it to where the normal person can communicate and it gets you what you want, and this is a good first step in that direction, I believe.
Yeah, and we're seeing that across almost all social platforms
Yeah,
on top of the actual AI platforms themselves, like ChatGPT and things like that. So,
yeah.
not everybody has access to this, but certain people on LinkedIn, for example, when you
Mm-hmm.
start to make your prompts, you will start to get a notification that's like, would you like AI or LinkedIn to use AI to help you get prompting? I actually got a notification. I had to update my Facebook this morning.
Mm-hmm.
There was some things I got in Facebook Messenger and some things like that where it was talking
Yes,
about managing. Do I want to use AI to help manage the community and streamline responses and different things like that?
exactly.
On top of the fact that now in the new update that they have for ChatGPT, which includes voice and some
Yeah,
things like that, which are super fire,
I know.
um,
Very exciting.
ChatGPT will help you do prompts, which is a little bit different from the plugins that they installed a couple months back, where there were people who helped you, or there were plugins that helped you build prompts. Now
Yep.
they have prompt builders and prompt engineering built directly into the paid subscription for ChatGPT and different things like that. So now I haven't tested that.
Yep.
I kind of pride myself on kind of coming up with my own prompts and listening. I was just listening to a few different videos as far as like tree of thought prompting that you can do in ChatGPT and logistical things and all of these different things. So I love kind of challenging myself to make sure that I understand how to do it and things. But I do want to run some tests where I run some prompts and then I have ChatGPT kind of create some prompts for me and things
Right.
like that, and just start to see how they're processing and thinking about it and things. Because again, I'm sure they're using all of the data. I mean, imagine how many prompts they've taken into account to build
100%.
this out right here. I'm sure they're going to get some fire ones when it comes. So I do look forward to seeing not only the integrations that they're having, but you're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right. And this is what we were talking about, what, 8, 9 podcasts ago when we first started to get on this kick
Yes.
about or talking about chat or AI and things. It's here to stay.
Yeah.
Whether people want to do it or not, it is literally going to be forcibly adopted into all of our day to day lives. Again, whether you want to or not, it just is what it is.
100%. I think about
So,
it because I've used analogies in the past of like, how AI is a revolutionary technology that's only going to continue to improve and innovate. And I think it was you, or it was actually, maybe it was my wife, but or somebody told me, but they were like, the version that we're utilizing today is the worst version of what we're looking at,
Literally.
right? So it's like that's insane to even think about what it's going to do from here. But remember, like they said, the tractors, or there used to be farmers and cattle out there. The tractors took over all of that over. From the tractors, then these big machines started to come into place, and everything innovates. And the same thing, the new analogy I actually used with one of our team members the other day was, the more and more I've started to use Chat GPT and AI, it almost makes you feel like, what would I do without this resource? Very similar to Google. And it made me think about, hey, like when people used to put together documentation or educate people or put out papers out there, it's like, how did people find all of the information? How did people compile it together? And it was, guess what, you went to a library and you did research. Well, then Google came
Literally.
along and obviously innovated everything, and then it was like, what was the norm to figure out your answers to everything? It was Google. And then social media started to improve it even a little bit further, and it's like, where were you starting to get your educational content from? There, and it was social. And now it's like, where do you get your information from? You get it from AI, you get it from Chat GPT, you get it from these
Mhm.
resources that just make it so much more seamless for you to. And it's like, how do you live without it? Well, you don't have to think about that, because guess what, exactly like you said, it's here to stay, it's working, it's going to improve everyone's life. Learn how to make it work for you is what I'm telling people.
So check this out, dude. So another one I've been playing with is new Bard. The
Okay.
new Bard
Bard,
is
yeah,
actually
Microsoft.
fire. So I'm actually testing now the paid ChatGPT 4 versus Bard and some things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I'm doing to just applying how realistic in your day to day life and just how it's tying all of these things together, and it's truly the new wave. So I'm planning my honeymoon right now,
Yeah.
or finalizing my honeymoon. I had everything all done, ready to go, and then I was like, you know what? Let me just ask ChatGPT
100%.
about the same thing. I had the details out. I spelled it out for the details. Dude, did you know with the new ChatGPT and Bard, how cool is this? So not only do I give it all the parameters, tell it what I'm looking to do, all of those different things, yada yada yada, helping it come up with some more ideas and
Mm-hmm.
really kind of coordinate logistically because there's a few different places. So I'm trying to figure out the most efficient route to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did, and because you actually had to spark that idea when you took your Europe trip,
Yeah.
not only did it help give me the most efficient route and tell me where I should stay at based upon which has the easiest access to ferries for the day, different things, so I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
take all of these flights. Then I was like, can you also help me find some flights,
Mm-hmm.
the cheapest flights,
Mm-hmm.
based upon I want to hit this and these dates and different things like that. Yep, give me just a second. Use web browsing on both of those tools to actually find not only the site or the cheapest flight, sent me the link. So all I had to do was click that bad baby and open it up.
Yep.
Same thing with rooms. So I'm like, well, I'm picking between these two resorts and different things like that. And it's just like, okay, what else do you need from me? I'm like, well, actually, do a price comparison from it. It's like, okay, give me a second. Search both of the sites, search
Yep.
kayak and all of those
Yep.
things. And it's like, well, based upon this, if you're looking for X, Y, and Z, this has the cheapest rooms. Here's the link to go and get those rooms. If you want to include this, here's the room. I would have literally had to do all of those things, search,
Mm-hmm.
figure it out, then go to cheap or best flights to blah 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 blah. Do I
Mm-hmm.
want to go through kayak? Do I just want to go directly through Delta? I had to pull it all up. Okay, here's my hotel. Okay, let me look at these flights or these rooms
Yep.
for the cost. All right, let me go to this website. Let me look at these costs for the hotel. Let me go to Expedia and see if there's any rooms that are available. I would have to take all of these steps, and all I had to
Insane.
do is put it into there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I'll do all of the hard work for you. Boom.
Literally.
And now I can just go back through. So when you just talk about, again, how seamless that it's starting to make things, when you talk about that next step and everything you're talking about, it aggregates things, it can pull
Mm-hmm.
it for you, and you don't got to go on through all of these individual steps and things like that. And so it
Literally.
just always blows my mind the practical use cases that we talk a lot about the business use cases and
Right.
social media use cases and all of those, but just the practical in your everyday life uses for different things like that are just super awesome.
Literally. Yeah, I mean, you were literally telling me that, and it reminded me of something, because I remember doing that, and I'm going to take it two steps further. One, that is something a little bit practical still today, and then an idea that just popped into my mind of what it's going to be able to do based on what we were just talking about. But the immediate thing was, you came up with your itinerary. It helped you plan everything, not only about your trip, but it could even help you plan your day-to-day activities, right, of like
Mm-hmm.
what you should do. Based on that, you can tell ChatGPT that, hey, I'm going at this time of the year during these dates. What's the average
Yep.
temperature? And it can tell you what you can wear each day based on the activities that you're doing, based on the different
Yep.
things that you're going to go do. And then what that sparked even further to me is you were talking about it was figuring out all of this information, getting you the links, making it easy for you to do. Eventually, it'll be able to actually book it for you. You'll say, hey,
Book it
find
for
that
you.
best flight,
Yes.
book it for me, go to these hotels, find me the best deal, book them for me, and it will do all of that literally all just by you talking to it and communicating exactly what you wanted. And it's just like, what are we even talking about when it's starting to be able to pretty much more than even act like an assistant, literally be a counterpart to everything you're thinking, and it's just giving you back everything that you're looking for. So it's like, wow,
Yeah, that's crazy, and they're already taking some steps
they are.
into that. For example, and we may have touched on this in our last podcast,
Maybe
but
last episode, but the one before, yeah.
in your with the paid version of ChatGPT,
Yeah.
you actually can build out a profile for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And what it'll start to do is it'll start to remember not only who you are, what your role is, and different things like that.
Right.
It'll start to keep in mind all of your previous chats. So right now, or what historically used to happen is each chat was truly treated separately. So
Yep.
started from scratch, no matter what you had said before. It was, if you click new chat, it's a completely new conversation and thing.
Yep.
Now what it's starting to do is exactly what you're talking about, whereas it's the same person, the same profile, the same basis of it. Now you can build in that stuff one time, and all of your chats moving forward will start to keep things like your tone of voice and your tonality and the way you speak and the position that you hold and the perspective that you hold, just to make sure that everything moving forward, I don't have to repeat those different types of things.
100%.
So it's already taking steps to do just that. So again, eventually, I think we're not too far away from, you put your credit card into the system under your same profile, and you do exactly that, and it'll scan your stuff. Boom. Now, is that scary? Absolutely. But you're talking to a person who still doesn't have Apple Pay. Just because I'm like, I don't know. But
I
again,
used
how
it this
funny is
morning.
this?
I walked into a gas station. I was like, boop, boop.
This is how backwards I am sometimes. I get sketchy about Apple Pay, but I bought a charger that holds all of my credit cards. So if you get my phone, you get it all anyway.
Yeah. That's funny. That's funny.
So, but no, super excited about that. I
Yeah,
know we
it's
kind of
fascinating.
segue and kind of got right into it.
I know. I literally segued right into the AI. It's just because it's so crazy what is being able to allow us to do. Even like you said, just in your day to day lives at home. Right now, thinking about the other improvements, but ChatGPT can now, the plus version can now look at images. You can talk audio to it. It can obviously understand what you type. So it's starting to be multi-module to where it can start to do different things for you. I saw a very cool example of where you could show it like an image of a bike, and you could say, "Hey, I want to adjust the seat." And it would tell you step by step how to do that. Taking it a step further, let's say you order like a table rack or something, or like a rack for your garage, and it was just pieces, and you showed it, hey, I got these pieces, I have this toolbox, what tool should I use, and step by step to put this together. It's starting to be able to figure out
how crazy is that?
Like, and with Dall-E 3 now coming out and integrating into it, the other thing that I thought about was when we were talking about the clothes, you could eventually start to tell it through Dall-E 3 by prompting it. It's like, hey, those are great recommendations. Can you show me what those pairings could look like? And it'll create images of what it recommended to you.
It's dope.
It's like, when do you use your brain? It's like you use your brain to be a good communicator and good contextualizer. And I think that's the skill that people will start to have to adapt to.
Well, I just had a conversation with one of our team members who was like, we were talking about some stuff for one of our clients who they wanted to do things differently than our standard process. And I was like, okay, what do you need from me? And she was like, well, I'm just trying to figure out how to tell her this person. And I was like, just use ChatGPT. And I was like, I can help you. I was like, but reminder, this is a great opportunity for ChatGPT. And she was like, well, I don't quite. She was like, well, what would I tell her? So I'm like, perfect. Let's do it. And so I started showing her how literally you can give ChatGPT the previous email chain.
And they'll
tell it all the things that she literally told me. I was like, so here's the email chain. Here's the email chain for context. Tell me exactly what you just told me. She said it. I typed out exactly what she told me, and then was like, now, based upon all that, craft a response based upon these standards. This is what we're willing to do, all of those different things. She did it, and she was like, every time I see someone else do it, it reminds me of how I'm not utilizing it. I'm like, I know. That's why I wanted that before I just gave you the answer and typed it up. you have access to doing this type of stuff. And then she was like, well, let me look at it. And I was like, well, you're supposed to. You got to look at it. You got to make sure it fits your tone.
Yep.
You got to make sure, again, the idea isn't just to copy and paste. A couple hours later, I saw the message go out. It was copied and pasted. And I was sitting there cracking up. I was like, you like that, don't you? She was like, yeah, it said everything in a better way than I can say it.
100%.
I was like, I know, and there's nothing wrong with that. I was like, but the same time it took me to just copy and paste, put it in, and spell out what I needed to do a few different times. Think about if you were to take that exact same time. I was like, you watched me do it right there in like 3 minutes.
I know.
How long would it have taken you to craft that email, feel comfortable with it, get your word, and you still would have sent it over to me and asked me to read it before, so you feel comfortable. And I was like, but in 3 minutes, we have a tool that can do all of those little things right there. So it still surprises me how people don't trust how well it works in certain situations sometimes, and how people are like, nah, I'd rather spend an hour doing it myself.
I know that doesn't make sense to me.
It's like get that.
It's going to change because the generations have always continued to increase the value of time and conveniency, and the tool is going to allow exactly that. If you're anything like me, which in school I always had really good grades, but my weakest subjects, if I had to say it, were English and writing. Like I really hated English and writing, just because I don't like to write, articles or paragraphs, or it's not my thing. So it's like even coming up with responses, I'm sitting here pondering for like 10 minutes first, like what am I even going to say? Then I got to craft it. Then I got to go reread it to
change
make sure
it and
good.
take a step back.
Is my tone right? And I'm like, no, let me just tell GPT to do what I think it should do, and it'll come up with one in literally 3 minutes.
It's way easier to edit. I'm about to say, because then you can just edit it, spice it up, and take it from there. But it's not even close. No. It's also funny for as similar as we are. It's always funny when when our differences really show up and things like that. That was actually my strong suit, was like English and writing and different things like that in school.
Math and science over here is like math and science crushed. I mean, I had good grades. Like I said, I was just good in school in general, but those were the ones I would say I paid the least attention in, or because I just did not enjoy them at all.
Yeah, no, I enjoy it. I mean, you know what I do. I got the gift of gab.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like it. All right, so that's a really good, launch on just, AI with Dall-E 3. Like I said, Plus users will probably get it, or are going to be getting it first. And the thing that we mentioned earlier, which is making it very easy for people to communicate, is slowly starting to happen. With Dall-E 2, you have to be a lot more technical. Like first, you have to be a good prompter, and then two, you have to understand creativity. Like you have to understand what it is that you're trying to put together, describe it very vividly. Now it's becoming a lot more simpler for even the most simple person like myself. Let's just say I'm not the most creative. I could literally just type in like, hey, I want to see a new developed business suite in the middle of Qatar, and what it would look like if it was for retail and business offices and XYZ, and make it a modern building, this and that, and just very easily it would be able to craft something up for me. And that's not even the most articulate way to put it together. So it's going to be very exciting. I'm interested. I haven't tried it out yet. I've just been reading the people who it has rolled out to. We are Plus users. I don't know if it's been available to you yet, but they'll start rolling out to the Plus users here in different groups or different batches. Sorry.
And I feel like sometimes I'll get all this stuff first, and then other times I'm like, how come Keith and Kaushal got that and I don't got it this time?
At one time, I had the web search browse function, and then it went away, and I thought I was just tripping, and then I literally saw an article, I think yesterday, that was like, oh, they reactivated it. I was like, when did it get deactivated? I had even no idea.
Mine is the code interpreter.
Yeah.
So I was super excited about it. I was like, okay, bet. I got some data that I wanted to analyze. So for everyone who doesn't know, there's what's called a code interpreter where you can actually upload a spreadsheet and literally have ChatGPT analyze the data for you. I was using it and everything like that. And all of a sudden it was just gone. And I was like, what? And other people are like, no, I still got it. And I was like, what? I was actually using it consistently. Literally. What happened? So now I'm excited about all of those different types of things. Actually, we can get off the subject. I needed to be able to upload like a PDF or something. Like obviously you can upload like the text or something. I want to be able to just upload like a PDF, upload like a Google slide presentation or something like that. Like the data is kind of helpful, but I want to be able to say, we get, so this is something we've been doing. So we get an RFP, like a government RFP. And for everyone who doesn't know, that could be 57 pages of a bunch of stuff. most of it not necessarily useful or helpful. I want to be able to upload that entire PDF without having to copy and paste in sections and different things like that, and be like, listen, analyze this, spit out the stuff that I need to know to put together a scope, break this down into something that's easily to understand and digest. So I
Yep.
don't have to have somebody on our team read 57 pages and make sure we got the legal down and
Yep.
make sure we got the deliverables and scope and the requirements and the next step. Like, break this down and do that. So that's some of the things that I can't wait for it to start to also roll out.
I agree. It's gonna be insane, but we'll keep watching it. We'll keep everybody updated, obviously, as new things roll out in the world of AI. Honestly, I would just go ahead and prep everybody that it's going to be a constant topic on this podcast, just because it's inevitable, it's happening, it's continuously improving, and technology just gets faster and faster and faster and better. And so, more frequently, we'll have rapid updates on what's happening with AI and social media. Okay,
Yep.
awesome. Let's segue into the last two portions of the podcast today. The first section of what I wanted to talk about is just give our audience quick updates on what's really happening in the world of social media, specifically on the
Okay.
platforms, new releases, new functionalities, new things to kind of be in the know of. Now, one of the things that I have definitely seen, and multiple platforms are rolling out with it, X, for example, Meta is going to be doing this. You saw the subscription model where people were paying to get exclusive content. Well, they're now
Yep.
starting to test out versions for each of the different platforms where you
Yep.
can do an increased portion or increased fee, and it's ad free. Reason that's interesting, specifically for marketers like us, is like, where does that take what brands and businesses are doing on social? But even on the flip side of that, because everything is becoming a paid portion, doesn't mean everybody will opt into it. Those that won't will still receive the ads, but those that do, how do you connect with them? How do you make sure that you're still resonating with them? And
Yep.
so a big portion of one of the big tips we'll have is organic social, but we'll come back to that. But with these paid subscriptions that they're starting to roll out with, whether it's for exclusive content or ad-free content, people need to start to be prepared for the costs on just utilizing these platforms going up. Where now does that mean, like I said, you have to opt in? Of course not, but just be prepared to lose some of what you was pretty much accustomed to, because they're going to start to evolutionize the way that they're improving in the functionality, the features they have, etc. So that's the big take about just the paid subscription portion.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I think is exciting, so obviously is the rising costs and things like that can be frustrating and things, but from a brand perspective, one of the things I think is exciting is we work with a lot of brands who have executives and individuals who
Yeah,
also are building a brand for themselves. So it's not just about the brand. And I love
I
that
agree.
platforms are making it easy to monetize that personal brand as well. And this is even for what we like to call the solopreneur audience and
Mm-hmm.
different things like that. So that's one of the things I do like about it, because historically, as you know, a lot of platforms had a very distinct segmentation between if it was personal and business.
Yep.
And personal was personal, and business was how you made money. All the cool features were have to be business. All of those different things like that.
Yep.
It's not that way anymore. Now, these platforms are understanding that a lot of times the person themselves are the business. So as far as the monetization aspect of that,
100%.
there needs to be a lot more seamless before. A lot of times people used to have to say, well, I'm in that middle space. Do
Mm-hmm.
I make a personal page and then just not get the access to those things? Or do I make a business page, which also isn't the most appropriate? I don't fit a lot of those different things right here, but
Right.
the monetization aspect, I can't take advantage of any of those different things without having that type of stuff, but I don't want it to operate that way. So that's one of the biggest takeaways that I see for brands, and the benefits that it'll provide is the ability to monetize
Yep.
a personal brand much, much, much easier than it used to be. And giving opportunities, like I said, for those same features and a lot of those different things to be used and to be utilized. So I'm excited to continue to see how they start to expand from that standpoint.
I agree with that. And going back to the Facebook Ray-Ban glasses coming out, YouTube Shorts is starting to incorporate a live feature. We've talked about on this podcast
Yep.
the live initiative that TikTok has rolled out with, where they're wanting to help
Yep.
creators monetize. everything is going to become about brand building. Like brand is really where it's at, and you're exactly right. It's not just about business brand building. It's about brand building, even as you as an individual on how you communicate and who you are.
Yep.
So I'm super excited about the monetization initiatives that all of the social platforms are coming out with, because they're really starting to think about the creators. Because if you're going to put out interesting content and people are regurgitating and resonating with it, then it's only right that, just like how college athletes for the longest time have advocated for the entertainment that they provide and the
Yeah.
billions and millions that they bring, the same way that these personal brands can start to do that for the brands that they care about, because they're going to have the impact that all the brands are looking for.
So I do want to say one other really cool, and I got to shout out our creative director Nisha, who does our Quizm, what's going on this week in social media, and
Mm-hmm.
this time some things that we talked about today. Twitter is actually rolling out and testing a feature right now where there will start to be notifications on AI generated content on pages.
Okay.
So tying these things together, that a lot of people have built this personal brand by leveraging AI. That was one of the concerns that a lot of people had is,
Yeah.
how do you identify a true thought leader and a true expert when
Right.
everybody can go into ChatGPT and all of a sudden become an expert in all of these different things? I'm curious to see how that's going to start to roll out and start to be effective things. So now when you create, because if this works out, I'm curious to see, like in all social media, how other social media platforms start to adopt this and different things. And now, how are you going to have to shift or do that? I actually had an opportunity to work with a company who is creating some technology that is a part of that field of how to vet and analyze creative, word, audio, video, to vet and then give it a score of how much likely is it that this stuff was created by AI.
I know.
So I'm very interested to kind of see what's going to happen in that stuff, kind of tying some of these things and building out that personal brand together.
It's super crazy because you hit on something actually very important there, which is, as information, everybody is really there for information or entertainment. As GPT normalizes what that information is, and you're exactly right, everybody can become an expert around something. The thing that's going to separate, and I think this is very important, it's one word, but that's what people are going to have to start to think about when it comes to whether it's their brand business or whether it's their personal brand. And it's about being authentic. It's authenticity.
Yep.
And how do you bring that? Because you're right, the information is going to be available to all. The knowledge that was maybe once upon a time only available to those that were very deep into something is going to be very easily digestible for all. Now,
Yep.
it won't take away from real world experience and people who have done it over time, because that's still a unique, but that's the authentic part of like what you bring to the table. I think that's where people need to start to be thinking about, is like, how do they bring their authentic vision and their message and their voice
100%.
to what they're doing? And I think that's
Because that's what everybody
growing.
wants.
Yeah.
That authenticity and being genuine. That's what people are really craving.
I like it. Okay, so for this section now, because I know we could honestly, for each of the different points that I put together, we could honestly probably talk about 5-10 minutes about each of them. But rather than doing that, because then the episode would just be insane, let's talk about. I'm going to name the points, and I want you to just say from 1 to 10 in this situation, how impactful you think it's going to be for that platform. Simple as that. You can give any number for any of them. It's not like you can only use it once. So just how impactful.
1 is no impact, 10 is crazy impact.
Correct.
Got it.
All right. So first one, Threads is adding a keyword search feature. Very simple among the other platforms, but they've just started to add it. How impactful do you think that's going to be?
3.
Love it.
I think it'll make it more practical, more useful, but I think it's just something that they should just have.
100%. For those that don't know, quick point, Threads, obviously the hype has died down. I won't still say it's a dead platform, still probably about close to 10 million daily active users, but the engagement levels and even the time on website there have dropped. But something to be aware of, still opportunity, but just want people to know that the space is not dead, but dying down. Okay. Next one, we'd already talked about the paid features, but TikTok is adding a creative assistant. So it's now going to allow people to, because it's also adding text-based content, so you don't have to always do everything video. You can just type a message. But how do you believe the creative assistant's going to help content creators? 1 to 10. How much?
6. I say 6 because I think it has impact, but similar to the same thing that we've been talking about, actually adopting the use case of it,
Yep.
it's only going to be as good as people actually take the time to use it and to leverage it. So same thing, chat or the AI is being implemented in prompting and all of those things.
Yep.
Could it potentially be game changing? Yes. Are people going to actually adopt it and take the time to use it and leverage it? That's where it says to be seen. So I'm not sure about the user interest in potentially doing it, but I do think it has potential, which is why I put it a little bit above that average. I would say
like
6.
Yeah, I agree. I think it always comes down to functionality and how easy it is, and then the adoption.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have
Yep.
your super users, and then those that have no idea what it's capable of doing. So,
Yep.
okay, LinkedIn. So LinkedIn profile call to action. So in that top portion of your LinkedIn, you usually have whether it's a statement like a call to action, then an action button. Those will actually be able to start to appear on feed. So people will be
Yes.
scrolling and your profile call to action will appear in feed, which I think is super powerful, especially for a business for sure. But because LinkedIn is so personable, even as a very thought leader, dedicated, I would say, brand, it's going to be very important for people to make sure that they're thinking about what's up there, what call to actions they're using, how frequently they're changing it, because it's going to show directly in people's feeds now. So I think that's fascinating. How impactful do you think that's going to be?
Or I think in order for it to be, and here's why I say that. The feature in and of itself is where I don't think it's necessarily going to be the most impactful, because one of the things about LinkedIn is you still have to have the consistency. You still got to have all of those other things that make people
Fair.
want to engage with you in some capacity. You still got to be there. You still got to be a thought leader. You still got to provide value. So if you're a person who is not providing any value, this feature is not going to help you at all.
That's fair.
So just the feature itself, I would say 4. Now, for certain people, this feature could actually be super game changing and different things like that, because it'll make it easy for people to do the end result, which a lot of people complain about on LinkedIn, and that's being take that next step to generate business from it. That's one of the same thing that people sometimes say organically is that, I do a lot of brand awareness, a lot of those different things, but how often does it translate to sales and not just building an audience and things? So the feature itself for some people, 7, 8.
I like it. That's fair. Definitely a good statement, and it pretty much works like that for all things. It's like you really got to be in tune with how it's going to work for you, and not just think that a feature is going to change the entire
Yep.
game. Yeah.
Yep.
The next portion for LinkedIn, you already actually mentioned this, but I do want to get your thoughts on how impactful it is. But the fact that companies can message now on LinkedIn,
Yep.
how impactful do you think that's going to be?
I actually put that to be that I'm going to give like a 7, 8. Outbound engagement is powerful. The ability to proactively infuse a brand into the conversation. The ability for people to actually DM a company page now, as opposed to having to go to an individual, and the ability to respond and do those different types of things.
Yep.
People want quick ways to get the information they need. That's one of the reasons that we put a chatbot on our site and that those type of things.
Yep.
Especially for quick bites of information. People don't always want to fill out a form, and people don't want somebody to call them back. People don't want those things. So I think the ability to truly engage real time with people is going to be game changing, and the ability to proactively take a brand and jump into conversations and not just have to use an individual. It'll make people feel special, I think. So I think that done the right way. Imagine a company sliding in your DM, as 100%. They say. Depending on what they're saying, I can see that getting some really good traction for people.
I did too. I'm excited about it. I think it's been a function where, like I said, because it didn't exist, it was more about the individual. I wouldn't say it levels the playing field, but it does make it more functional for businesses to communicate on LinkedIn, which I think was missing for a long time. Okay, the next one is YouTube is coming out with subscriber analytics. So for the longest, you could get analytics around how long your video was being watched, how many people watched it, what the engagement looked like, but you couldn't get information around the people who were watching it. Ironic, right?
Yes.
So they're rolling out with subscriber analytics. I think that's obviously going to be helpful. Something most people probably were like, why they didn't have it up to this point. But how impactful do you think that's going to be for YouTube now that people can understand who their audience is?
That I'm going to say has the potential to be that I'm going to give 8. That I'm going to give an 8, because Now, if I don't have to guess of those things, if I don't have to do all of these different things to get workaround ways and pixeling to try to assume some of that type of stuff, if I know who it is, and now I can do two things with that, whether it's strategically running ads and things to target that stuff. So now if I know that this is my needle in a haystack,
Mm-hmm.
I can just run campaigns just after that. That's going to be powerful. But then also, I think it's going to be increase engagement rates for different things like that, because now I can take a deeper dive as opposed to just saying, well, let's talk about all of these things, Kaushal. Even just using you and I. Let's talk about all of these things that are in the space of social because
Mm-hmm.
they're appropriate, because they're trending and they're social, they're big and things like that. If we can now say, actually, how can we take that same content but tweak it to really speak specifically? So if we're going to talk AI, for example, instead of just talking AI, if I know that the audience is male or female or age or C level or whatever these different things, I can say, let's talk AI in regards to that specifically. That's where I start to think that the engagement starts to be powerful and the ability to grow that page and grow it efficiently and use those dollars efficiently, which is always important, as opposed to having more wasteful spend and quote unquote testing and trying to figure it out and things like that, because that's where a lot of dollars go to. And so I don't want to use the word wasteful because it's not wasteful, it's important. But as you know, most people would love to spend the dollar to only go after the people who are likely to do whatever the call to action is going to be. Yeah. That's just not how ads work. You got to pay to test. It is what it is. Test audience, test creative, test copy, test captioning. Yep. If some of that stuff can be done for you and now you can hone in without having to pay to test, game changing.
Exactly. I agree. Because all of it was, because, YouTube is owned by Google. People could do exactly that, pay to kind of figure it out. Now, yep. That organic portion, which, like I said, we'll harp on here in a second, it's just organic's becoming more and more powerful. And I'm happy for YouTube releasing this functionality. Okay. The last big platform update that we have, and to get your take on, is Instagram's had close friends functionality specifically for stories where only a select group of your people, really true engagers, could see it. Well, they're launching a function called exclusive feed posts that is only for close friends as well. So your feed will actually have different posts for those that are considered your close friends versus those that just follow you. Amazing for brands, especially if you want to release exclusive content for your hardcore evangelists and your community. I think this is an opportunity where they get to see those exclusive feed posts and the rest of the following won't. And if you really are somebody who wants to be, then you have to engage with that brand. You have to interact with them to be considered a close friend.
I put that at a 5 because I see pros and cons to that. When done strategically correct, absolutely. And that's one of the things I immediately started thinking on a positive use case is if I want to create an exclusive aspect, an exclusive community. So we get a lot of people like, I want to build a community.
Right.
Every follower doesn't necessarily want to be a part of that consistent community, which is okay. Yeah. I love that aspect of it. Now, this is for my general followership. This is for that, because again, I'm assuming part of the next steps would be potentially paid aspects of that and different things like that.
Yep.
I give it a 5 because I also see the cons for it. I would argue from a business perspective, not a personal perspective, because from a personal perspective, I can also see how, like, if you're an influencer, you do so many different things for your brands and things like that, but all of a sudden you don't have a personal identity for your friends and different things like that. Mm-hmm. I can see that. The cons are the time and how efficient is it going to be to curate different types of people, different types of content, and then what does that actually translate to? So, for example, if you're trying to measure an ROI from your social media campaign and different things like that, will you be able to monetize the exclusiveness of it, which makes it worth having to create exclusive only types of different content versus creating more segmented and curated content and different things like that, which again, we talk about. You don't have to speak to every single person all the time on your social posts. Once you understand your audience, you can hit a couple of different posts a month that are specifically speaking to the general audience, but then that also speak to all of those individual ones. You can do that currently right there without having to curate completely separate and separate them out in different things. So I'll put it at a 5 because I can see strategically how some people it could work. I could also see for a lot of people, the ROI that'll potentially happen and the benefits aren't necessarily worth having to go through what you have to do to maintain that community.
I agree. Perfect. And I think that honestly, ironically, and honestly, that is the perfect segue into the last portion, which is just want to give 6 quick tips for businesses on what's happening in social and what they should be doing. And I think that point actually touched on the very first point that I wanted to bring up. So it's that cross posting isn't as effective anymore. And I think you touch upon something, which is how important is it for businesses on where they put their resources? You're right. Social media, especially when it's releasing all of these different things, the reason it's hard is because it's labor intensive, it's time consumption isn't high. On top of that, it just takes a lot of actual resources to be able to do it all. Hence why cross posting for a very long time was what people did. Because guess what? One is better than zero, and not having the resources to make unique content for those segments, for those different platforms, has always been a burden for a lot of businesses and brands. But it is a proven fact. It is actually more relevant than ever that right now cross posting is at its lowest when it comes to engagements and actual value when it comes to doing it on the social platforms. Obviously, like I said, should you still do it if you don't have the capabilities and resources to? Yes, but
Yep.
being thoughtful about being contextual to the platform and the user is becoming more and more important as ever. So that's my first tip: is how do you do that as a business? Be thoughtful about it for sure.
100%. I mean, that's something that we talk about all the time is that targeting and finding people, that's the easy part.
Yeah.
You can find the people. How do you create things, again, that separate your brand from not just your competitors, but all of the other noise of things that are going to be thrown at them? And that's exactly where it comes from. It's the creative. It's the targeting aspect from the creative standpoint that
Yeah.
makes sure you're speaking to these different people. It's not just the ability to find them and put them in front of Kaushal.
Literally.
All type of people can find Kaushal and put advertising and comments in front of them. People do it all day long.
Literally.
How are you going to separate yourself from everything else that makes me want to not look at my fantasy football stuff and do all the and look at some sports highlights and look at some of those things and actually say, let me actually take the time to engage with this brand.
100%. Even if it's, you can use the same, let's say it's a video or let's say it's a story about you, and it's not even necessarily that you can't utilize that maybe core piece of content on the other platforms, but it's how you communicate it. What is the headline that you chose? What is the caption that you utilized with it? What is the call to action at the end of that you're utilizing? It has to be different. It has to be unique. You need to put a little bit more thought, even if the specific piece itself isn't unique, because all of us do that where we post the same piece of content on different platforms. But how do you change the other portions of it is also an
Yep.
important variable. Yeah. Okay.
100%.
Next tip for businesses is tip number 2, work with content creators. It's becoming more and more important than
Yes.
ever. And I really need people to understand that that doesn't only mean influencers that charge you an arm and a leg each time. That literally means people who understand how to create content naturally for the platforms that maybe if you're a local
Yes.
business, you can leverage in your local community. Maybe if it's a regional thing, you're finding people that's important. Maybe it's an interest-based thing and you just find somebody who's influential in that space but isn't necessarily an influencer. So working with
Yes.
creators as businesses, tip number 2, you need to be thinking about how you're going to do that.
100%, man. Yeah, I don't even got much to add to that. That's just a simple.
Simple.
Yes, there are people who know how to do it much better than you can. And this is the thing that we always try to encourage people to keep in mind. The return you get on the back end will be significantly worth the investment that you have to make on the front end to put in something. So to utilize their expertise, to utilize their skill set, to utilize that will give a return as opposed to you just testing and trying and figuring it out. 100%.
100%. I agree too. So I think that one is huge. It is a little bit of a known, but like I said, all of these things are just becoming things that I think businesses really just need to keep top of mind because they're being the most impactful when it comes to success on social media, which is what I think everybody who's watching is interested in. Okay, so point number 3, social search is on the rise. We saw it obviously with TikTok. Literally, I saw my niece the other day, who she's I think 12, and I was talking to her, and she was like, "I look up everything on TikTok," and I'm like, "Really interesting," because I still sometimes, a lot of times, will go to Google in situations, or even ChatGPT now, thinking about the next step. But social search is huge. YouTube has done a good job with their shorts, but all the platforms are starting to prioritize that search functionality and how it applies to the content that they're seeing.
Yeah, and TikTok is taking it to another level. TikTok's making it official where they're starting to incorporate Google searches and different things like that directly into it. I mean, we saw that trend 6 to 9 months ago, though, where people stopped going to different cities and saying Yelp for the best restaurants near me. 6 to 9 months ago, TikTok was already starting to be on the rise for things to do when I'm in this city, best places to eat when I'm in this city, all of those different things like that. So that's not a surprise, but yeah, TikTok is absolutely taken to the next level. So, and I just think that just makes sense. I mean, because similar to one of the reasons we love AI is because it brings everything into one thing. That's what TikTok is able to do. So not only am I able to get a list and look at reviews and things like that, but now I can see real versions of food, not just kind of these pictures, these, Canva style pictures of your menu and different things like that. I can watch people eat. I can watch it come out. I can watch people have a great time at this place. I can look at the decor. I can actually see it and start to picture myself. So not only can I see these are the best restaurants, I can say, okay, let's take it even deeper. Are people enjoying themselves? What's the music? What's the vibe like?
100%.
What's the presentation like? It gives me everything I want without having to do multiple searches and things like that. And people are always looking for efficient ways to do that. Just that simple. So I love that idea. And I think it's something that every platform is going to really be starting to lean into very simply.
I agree. The big change, and I know a lot of people have been starting to hear this, but I want businesses everywhere to realize the big change in social media outside of the platforms that are the most relevant is it's changed. The algorithms have changed from the social graph to the interest graph, and this search functionality only doubles down on that more to where people what they're interested in is what they're being seen, not socially just what your friends are putting out or the brands that you follow. So following isn't as important anymore, even though everybody's like, I need 1 million followers. Following isn't as important as the quality and the value of the content that people are putting out.
I think that's a super good point, man. I think that's a super good point to wrap up on.
Fourth point.
Yeah, one more. Oh, sorry.
I think it's 3 more. Fourth one, did I already do 3? I think 4. Yeah. So fourth one, social commerce. So social commerce is the most things are going to be sold on social media this year than ever. It's going to be the biggest. More people are buying on social, but customer service is lacking, ironically, right? Customer service from social media is essentially now becoming, in my eyes, probably the third biggest priority outside of bringing value and engagement being number 2. Bringing value is number 1 always. You need to continue to do that forever, whether it's through entertainment or education or whatever it may be. Engagement is number 2. You have to engage. You have to make sure you're interacting with your community and your followers. Number 3, the biggest thing that I think is happening is customer service. And you saw that with Twitter. You saw that with the chatbot functionality that Meta did roll out with a while back. But it's becoming more important as people are selling more things. Customer service, shipping updates, getting feedback on products, getting refunds. All of that thing is moving to social media. And guess what? The biggest one, complaining, is the biggest, and people are doing it on social. So it's customer service. I was about to say,
and that's the worst part is what we've known in business for years is that a negative is going to go so much further than what that positive is going to go. You can do 14 orders right. And as soon as you get that 15th one that's not right, that's the person that's going to go on social and be loud about it and all of those things. So, you're 100% right. Customer service. And I think the other reason that's important is because competition is just massively increasing every space. There is not a space. I won't say there's not. There's very few spaces that truly don't have competition. Right. And by competition, I mean extensive competition at this point. One of the negative things of the rise of things like AI and some of those things is that, again, more people can play in the space, even if they're not supposed to be in the space. It kind of reminds me of a comment I used to make with our SEO company that we had, where I would always tell people when we were talking, I don't need to know much about being a plumber.
Yeah.
However, I can build a better site that comes up and gets me searches than you could right now, or than that you have right now, because I understand how it works. Right. I don't know a thing about plumbing.
Right.
Our team could build a brand new site from scratch right now, and I bet I get more phone calls than your site gets right now, though. And I don't know anything about that type of stuff. So you got to understand how that stuff works and the dynamics and things like that, because that's what also becomes important. It's not just what you understand and what you know and what you have the knowledge and different things like that to do.
I agree. So customer service needs to be the priority.
Gotta have it.
Yep, has to be a priority. So last 2, we'll run through these 2 quickly. This one's pretty straightforward, but a lot of people still don't do it because it's hard to measure and it's hard to really see the impact. But surprise and delight within your community. It's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. The bigger brands are really starting to understand it. But all businesses, why can you do it? Even if you're a local business, how do you adapt to surprise and delight strategy is super important. And I think every business should have a small portion of where they're navigating resources into this initiative.
Simply put, here's why. Everybody wants to be made feel special.
100%
Just
agree.
that simple.
100%
People
agree.
aren't ignorant that they pay your business for a deliverable or a service. People are not ignorant that they paid you for a product and your job was to deliver a high quality product on time. People aren't ignorant to that. But that's what makes this so important and so special. There's
Right.
not an expectation that you do exactly what you're talking about. So when you do it, that 25 that $15 gift card that you send, matter of fact, that $5 gift card that you send, that's like, hey, here's virtual coffee on us, $5.
Mm-hmm.
That's are the things that make people stay and retain and stay with you for another 6 months. Those are the things that make people say, you need to go and call this company right here because they really care. People just want to know you care.
Oh,
They gave you their hard-earned dollars. They just want
understatement.
to know you care about
Oh, we literally
it.
have a team member here at Socially, and this is how impactful it is. I really want people to know that Radio Shack of all businesses, we saw it's had its wave. It's probably one of its lowest points. Radio Shack did something a long time for them where it surprised and delighted. And he told me 2 days ago, "Oh, I'm still loyal to Radio Shack." I was like, "Radio Shack?"
Radio Shack.
Literally, just because they surprised and delighted him. So it's like you have no idea how impactful, how that small special moment, even as little as $5, the fact that you recognize something, it can go a really long way for an individual. So I agree, surprise and
That's
delight,
funny.
and and point number 6 to end it off. We talked about it 2 or 3 times already. Organic social media is the most important ever, and I think people are realizing it because a lot of calls
Yes.
I've been getting on have been like, "Hey, how do I get more active on organic? How do I get more active on organic?" I'm like, "You don't
Yes.
want to spend any money?" They're like, "No, I want to be more active on organic and invest resources there." Organic social is impactful. The brands are starting to understand, like I said, the interest graph versus the social creative is the biggest variable. But you
Yep.
have to be investing in organic social for brand building and longevity. I think it's super important, and I don't think enough businesses still harp on it enough.
No, man, just that simple. And what it's all about, again, the experience that you're creating organically. This is where it's important to leverage UGC. I know a lot of people hear it and it's trending and things, but that's what people want to see, that user generated content,
For sure.
experiential content, participatory content, those things that make me want to do something besides like, if I do that and not just keep scrolling, the things that make me want to tag Kaushal. Hey, check this out when you get a second. The things that I've sent you when I'm like, hey, watch this video, I'll send it over to your DM. Those are things, those aren't paid experiences that I'm getting and things like that. Those are organic, authentic, genuine experiences that are so to the point where I say, I even got to get other people involved so I can let other people know and check this out.
Literally.
That's what you want to start to do. And that's what you want to really start to create.
I agree, 100%. And I think that actually brings us to our session today. I think we actually went a little bit long. I hope the audience loves it. I know it's a long session. It's a lot of different valuable points, but I really hope that they start to understand the reason we wanted to put this content out is to help their businesses thrive, help you all continue to grow. And this is what's happening in the world of social media. So before we
100%.
sign off, Lorenzo, any final thoughts?
Uh, at the end of the day, one thing that we always want to be is a resource for everybody. So if there's any topics that y'all are ever want us to touch on, go ahead, post them in the comments. Let us know. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Lorenzo Johnson and Kaushal Kacadia. Start to check us out and follow so you can see some of the same things that we're talking to you all about. You will see on our personal pages, on our company social media. We're also trying to follow and practice what we preach. So always appreciate feedback, whether it's positive or negative. Always want to hear topics that y'all are interested in us really taking a deep dive in. And again, be on the lookout for guests. That is one of the next levels that we really want to bring to here. Hope that you guys here enjoy hearing us talk, but we also want to make sure we get some other people, some industry experts, some really cool different people to come and bring their perspective into this. So definitely stay tuned and be on the lookout for that.
Love it. Follow us, subscribe to us, like, share, please. We appreciate the loyalty. We appreciate you watching. And till next time, Seriously Social, signing off.
Yes, sir. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.